been saying. Everywhere. Stealing from people. Snatching people's phone.
Kuvunja maduka hapa, sisi tunawaangalia. Sasa tumeamua na sisi tuingie kwa hii vita, tusaidie polisi.
Looting and chaos as hooligans invade the street protests. And major city roads blocked in the heat of the chaos.
The president must publicly direct his security organs to forthwith seize the ongoing abductions, an exercise that we believe is being undertaken with his full approval and the approval of the state. He must account for and order the release of all detainees abducted by these security agencies.
ODM now wants government to release 50 missing protesters. Plus, Media marks journalists among those injured by tear gas canisters in today's protests. Well, good evening to you. I'm Alan Owino. Our sign language interpreter for this session is Evelyn Wangoi. Protests in the capital, Nairobi, on Tuesday took a different turn as goons infiltrated the demonstrations, causing chaos and looting property. They, however, were met with the hand of vigilant businessmen who took matters into their own hands to protect their businesses. Mariam Jahid reports on the protests that have left a trail of destruction as police used tear gas to disperse crowds that engaged them in running battles, paralyzing business in the city.
For 3 weeks in a row, the anti-government protests have rocked the city of Nairobi. As early as 11 a.m., the agitated youth took to the streets with an aim of bringing business to a standstill. Carrying placards as they sang songs of solidarity and anti-government chants, law enforcers were forced to use tear gas to disperse the gathering crowds along Kenyatta and Moi avenues. They are demonstrations that began as peaceful protests. However, the events of today have painted a different picture.
The goons have been saying everywhere. Stealing from people, snatching people's phone, and we are here to deal with them.
Okay.
Deal with them first, then we'll continue with our protest.
Businesses forced to close as goons started descending on the shops and looting.
Maandamano na amani. Hii mambo ya kuvuruga hii maduka za watu hapana. Kama ni maandamano watu wafanye maandamano ya amani kwa sababu hii ni Kenya. Kama wote tunataka Kenya isonge mbele, tutarudisha wengine nyuma na wengine wasonge mbele. Hapana.
Wamevunja maduka hapa, sisi tunawaangalia. Sasa tumeamua na sisi tuingie kwa hii vita, tusaidie polisi.
The business community forced to protect their businesses. Those who dared to reap where they did not sow, receiving a beating before being handed to law enforcers. Business was unusual. The daily calm in the city was clouded by tear gas, making it hard for Kenyans to engage in their daily activities. The protesters also took to the streets with 7 coffins, communicating that they are seeking justice for those who died by the gun in the ongoing protests. A scene that left law enforcers in shock before they embarked on clearing the streets once again and putting the coffins in a lorry. The protests continue despite the president doing away with the Finance Bill 2024. What began as peaceful protests continue to spell destruction and doom as goons infiltrate the Gen Z protests. Mariam Jahid, K24, Nairobi.
Parents have expressed concerns over their children's safety as they resume school following protests that continue rocking different parts of the country. Unlike the norm, parents were today left with no choice but to escort their children to the bus stations amid fare hikes. Parents have further expressed their disappointment towards the Ministry of Education's failure to communicate on the way forward or postponement of school resumption amid protests.
In the early hours of the day, calm was evident in Nairobi's central business district, as parents, hand in hand with their children, rushed towards different bus stations to ensure the children boarded PSVs safely to their schools, even as the protests rock different parts of the country.
Nilikuwa naogopa, lakini nimeweza kumleta town aende shule. lakini bado tunaogopa. Hata mimi nauliza nitarudi aje kwa nyumba, bado niko na hiyo wasiwasi, naogopa.
Nilisubiri sana nikiangalia simu nione at least kama shule imecommunicate, but until today morning si kuona any communication. So ilibidi nitoke mwenyewe nihakikishe ameenda. Juu ni candidate na wamepoteza mengi.
Watoto wetu hata kama wameenda shule pia sijui kama wataconcentrate, sababu wanajua Nairobi kuna shida. Mtoto anakuambia mama taenda aje, wewe unajitoa unamleta hapa, au obvious wanajileta, lakini sasa atungeruhusu watoto wajilete na tujui town iko aje.
Even more unfortunate for the parents, transport prices were also hiked.
Last time tulikuwa tunalipa 600, nikienda na school bus ilikuwa 400, but sasa ni 800 na magari pia kuna sana.
Tunalipanga 450, sasa ni 700.
Juu kawaida hapa mtoto kushuka pale Kagio huwa tunalipa at least 400, but ameenda na double 800.
Parents expressed their disappointment following the Ministry of Education's failure to communicate the way forward or postponement of school resumption amid protests.
Wange turuhusu hii wiki watoto wasiende, kwanza tuangalie vile kutakuwa hadi rais wetu aongee nao vijana wasikizane, ndio hii mambo ya maandamano iishe.
Some lamented over schools' failure to provide transportation or communication.
Huwa tunaenda na school bus lakini leo wakasema hakuna. In fact nimepitia Green Park nikapata hakuna basi yote. So we are here waiting for vehicles to come, at least tuende shule mapema.
Other schools, however, advised parents to return their children to school only when they felt safe doing so. In Mombasa County, a majority of students were forced to walk home in crowds. This is after the administration released students early, fearing for their safety, as looters not only stole and vandalized stores, but also harassed and stole from residents. Star of the Sea Primary and Secondary School also experienced a disturbance as protesters marched close to the school near the Pandya roundabout area. Elsewhere, parents and the Board of Management of Makoho Secondary School in Kakamega County called on the Teacher Service Commission, TSC, to cease frequent transfers of school head teachers, citing a negative impact on schools' overall performance and stability.
When a principal comes in and there is a strategic plan in place, and he leaves in a year or within a year, or in 2 years' time, implementation of that strategic plan is in trouble. And this has led this school to where it is.
There is high risk in school collapsing because of the changes. It enhances risk of strikes among our students. The transfers taints the image of the school to other principals and the general public as a whole.
The school, which currently has a population of 450 students, has a new head teacher which they say should have ample time to work and ensure there is a stable, integral and performing environment.
One person is feared dead with 3 sustaining bullet wounds following Gen Z demonstrations in Mombasa today. The demonstrations, which started peacefully, were later invaded by goons who stole property and burned several vehicles, leaving business owners counting losses.
Hundreds of youths in Mombasa today joined the peaceful Gen Z demonstration countrywide with a call for better governance and accountability in leadership.
I feel mal tumefika kama vijana, Ruto ametufinya kabisa, tumechoka kabisa, tuna makazi, so tumefika hapa kuonyesha Ruto like sisi, tutaka kuonyesha sisi tumechoka kabisa.
The Gen Z have continued to put pressure on the government to initiate talks which will champion for inclusion in the fight against corruption, while expressing dissatisfaction with President William Ruto's 2 years power.
Kila kata kisimama juu anasema ametenga. Hiyo ametenga tuzioni. Sawa? So far hii ni miaka miwili. Anasema tu nimetenga pesa fulani kwa mavijana, nimetenga kitu fulani na tujaona.
Amekuwa akipromise mambo mingi sana na tukamchagua na pia wazazi wetu wakamchagua. Lakini sasa hii ni mwaka wa 3 ambao hakuna kitu amedeliver. Hajadeliver kitu yoyote.
Kwa leo nimeamua kufika hapa town, huyo Ruto tutaki kumsikiza chochote. Tunasema must go.
The demonstration was later invaded by criminal gangs who conducted looting several business premises along Pandya Hospital and within the CBD.
Wenye wanaingililia kuinterfere na maandamano ni adui wetu kama vile Ruto. Tukiwashika pia tunadili nao vile tunadili na Ruto.
Police were watching at a distance while all kind of looting was taking place, which led to a one-armed businessman to protect his business, firing several bullets.
Wangapi wanakubaliana na mimi hatupori mali ya watu? Wangapi wanakubaliana hatuibii watu?
Several vehicles were tortured with property of a non-value destroyed. Boniface Msangi, K24, Mombasa.
A heated push and pull ensued today in Kangemi protests on Wayaki Way Road after hundreds of protesters pelted stones at road users, mostly aiming at police officers. As our reporter Ben Kirira informs us, the officers were at some point forced to park their vehicles under the bridge to avoid getting hit with the stones pelted by the protesters, who appear to have been infiltrated by hooligans.
For over 4 hours, police officers and protesters were involved in a fierce tug-of-war in Kangemi. Protesters pelted stones at police officers, who on their end armed themselves with batons, tear gas, guns and water cannons. At one point, the protesters, mostly young people, seemed to overpower the police officers and threw stones at them. The police retreated while changing their strategy to deal with the protesters.
President anaenda nje anakopa pesa anakuja, lakini hatuone hizo pesa kasi zimefanya. Umeona ushuru imekuwa tu juu kutoka ingi kwa kiti. Bana tunatoa pesa lakini hatuoni kitu. Alafu kitu imeumiza sana sisi kabisa, tuende kwa barabara. My friend, sisi mashamba tuliachiwa na mababu zetu na mababa zetu. Lakini mnaanzaje kuleta bill ati sisi tuanze kulipisha nini? Kulipisha mashamba.
Some hooligans, disguised as protesters, used the opportunity to try to break into the Quickmart supermarket to steal products, but a section of police officers stopped them and prevented them from doing more damage.
Hakuna kasi. Alafu napata watu wenye wako karibu na yeye. Machama wanaendelea kununua mapawa, wananunua mapiloti, wananunua mapurato, wananunua makari, lakini wananchi wamefinywa.
A few moments later, police officers had to call for backup from their colleagues to deal with the increasing number of protesters. Help arrived quickly, and police officers quickly overpowered the protesters, firing tear gas and keeping them under control for about an hour, until they fully retreated minutes past 4 p.m. Journalists are among the injured from the protest, including K24 political reporter Joel Chacha and MediaMax driver Ezekiel Kariuki Mwangi. This comes even as the protesting youth vow to continue their protest on Thursday, calling for leadership reforms in the government. Ben Kirira, K24, Nairobi.
Despite an outcry from the public for the government to cut on its budget, including the salaries of members of parliament, and the Salaries and Remuneration Commission (SRC) has effected its monthly remuneration for the National Assembly and the Senate for the 2024-2025 financial year. The new structure is said to give legislators a hefty salary increment. Bentura Kwamboka tells us more.
As the new Salaries and Remuneration Commission monthly remuneration for state officers Gazette notice takes effect, legislators and other public servants are set to take a hefty salary rise amidst demands from Kenyans for the government to effect budget cuts and other austerity measures. In the Gazette notice published in August 2023 for the third remuneration and benefits review cycle for the 2023-2024 to 2024-2025 financial year, SRC has stated that a monthly remuneration for public officers in the National Assembly and the Senate will be effective this month of July 2024. As of from this month, members of parliament and senators will earn 739,600 shillings, up from 725,502 shillings, with the majority and minority leaders of the National Assembly earning 800,019 shillings, up from 784,768 shillings. Speaker of the National Assembly Moses Wetangula and the Speaker of the Senate Amason Kingi will be taking home a gross salary of 1.2 million shillings, up from 1.1 million shillings, with their deputies Kathuri Murungi and Gladys Boss-Shulei taking 966,690 shillings, up from 948,261 shillings respectively. Others that are set to benefit includes governors and members of county assemblies who are set to earn 1 million shillings, up from 924,000 shillings, and 164,588 shillings, up from 144,375 shillings respectively. As Kenyans take to the street for the third week in a row, demanding, among other things, a cut in MPs' salaries, President William Ruto, in a media interview at State House on Sunday, said that he has no powers to slash the legislature's salaries.
I've seen they have also said we should reduce the salaries of MPs to 200,000 or something. Some of those things are things that are not in my power. Those are the things that we need to do, a whole of society, a whole of nation approach.
Last year, the president rejected SRC's 70% salary increment for state officers, including him and his deputy, cabinet secretaries and their secretaries, principal secretaries, the Attorney General, the Head of Public Service, Inspector General of Police, and Director General of the National Intelligence Services, citing the need to have equity in the increment plan. And following the withdrawal of the Finance Bill 2024, President William Ruto has intimated his intentions to borrow an extra 346 billion shillings to fill in the government deficit. As of June 2023, Kenyan debt had amounted to 70% of its GDP, contrary to the recommended threshold of 50% to the GDP for developing countries, a phenomenon that has been putting a strain on the Kenyan economy. Bentura Kwamboka, K24 TV.
Well, that report by Bentura Kwamboka brings us to a fast break right here on K24 Evening Edition. We'll be back with more in a short while.